But I'm telling you, one of the questions that is almost never lurking in the back of our minds, that we almost never ask, is how can this be easier? How can I do, what's the effortless way to do this? And as a result, because we don't ask the question, we don't get the answer to that. And I have been on this now like multi-year journey of asking that question. And it never ceases to amaze me. It is an ultra powerful question.
I'm excited about Effortless. You've released a new baby into the world. How does that feel?
Yes, well, it does feel a little baby-like. You're protective of it. You worry about it a little bit. It just physically, literally arrived. So for those that are listening, I'm literally holding it up now. The final thing, and it felt very satisfying actually to receive it, and it's sort of become symbolic for me right now, where I'm like, I want to hold it and keep it with me and just remember to there's always a simpler way to do things. There's always a more effortless way to go about life. And that doesn't mean everything is easy or everything is effortless, but that it can be a bit, at least that not everything has to be hard all the time. And so this is like my personal reminder of that right now. And I feel good about it.
Well, we're going to get deep into the weeds on all of that. But before we get into it, just a little curiosity based on you had such a huge success with your last book, Essentialism. How has that pressure changed now that, that book is out there and it's been so well received? Putting this book out to the world, do you feel a little bit of extra pressure?
I felt one of the things I did that made writing this book harder than it needed to be was I just worried about it a lot. There's been 7 years since Essentialism came out and now Effortless, which in publishing terms is like unbelievably long period of time. Normally, 18 months be the minimum, but almost expected cycle on books. And I just never felt good about it. It just never felt like the right time until I wrote this book. And so I've been sort of working on this throughout that time. And my personal aspiration was just like, don't write a rubbish book. And that was my mantra. I probably should have chosen a better mantra, but that was it, because the temptation to just write something and you put it out there, and publishers and even agents and everyone just thinks, well, if they like Essentialism, they'll like this. And it's like, well, that is not what I see. I see loads of examples of people who have a book and lucky enough that it's successful, and then they do another thing and it just dies on the vine. It's just like people go, yeah, skipping this one. And so I've really wanted to write something that I felt was useful and relevant and that stands alone. And so that's how I think about them now. I think that they are standalone books, and I'm pleased that they are. But I also think they're a bit like cousins. They're not the same, but that they're better together. Now that I'm thinking about it, in one word, essentialism is prioritization, and in one word, effortless is simplification. And so, like, excuse the grandiose example, but like Paul McCartney and John Lennon, both produced music separately, but it was when they made music together that the magic happened in the Beatles. And I like to think of Essentialism and Effortless having something like that relationship, where they stand alone, but together there's kind of a multiplying effect that I think will help people to not just know what's essential, but actually to be able to put it into practice, because they find an easier, less stressful, less complicated way to do it.
Well, I think definitely actually something really powerful about the new book is your inspiration behind writing it. And you talk about this at the end of the book, where this comes from a health crisis within your family, your daughter. So I'd love for you to set the stage and talk about how that ended up leading to writing about this topic.
We'd moved as a family into quite an idyllic place. It was we're in nature. There's more horseways than roadways. There's white picket fences. It's just a beautiful place for the children just to be, and they just thrived. Especially one of my daughters, Eve. who was just always climbing trees and running barefoot everywhere and naming our chickens. Yep, we have chickens. And, it's just a little heaven on earth, really. And we're just so delighted with it all. Eve was, she'd read endlessly, literally, hundreds of books, and write in her journal every night, voluminous in the way she would speak and articulate and everything. And then she turned 14 and she just slowed down a bit. So she would speak less with us. She'd take longer to do her chores. She would, kind of answer in one word sentences. And we thought, well, pretty age appropriate behavior, really. We weren't thinking much of it. But then when she went to just a standard physical therapist visit, the therapist said, well, she failed this test this reflex test. So you might just want to, don't want to alarm you, but you might want to go see a neurologist. And we didn't have to be told twice, that suddenly reframed her change in behavior enough that we thought, well, maybe there's something serious going on here. And from that day, we observed her behavior in free fall. And so just like imagine normal behavior, but just super slow motion. And so like the right-hand side of her body just stopped working. She literally answered every question in one-word sentences. It took 2 whole minutes for her to write her name. It took hours to eat a meal. And all this time, we're getting tests from different neurology departments. It's all coming back within the normal range. So she is on a fast track to becoming comatose and dying. But there's not even the beginning of a diagnosis. So yeah, that's the stuff that suffering can be made of, right? There's no question. And it was in the midst of that test that I found sort of 2 paths opened up, mentally in my mind. I could see 2 paths, and one was this, what I now would call a heavier path, where we blame everybody, where we get angry at the world, where we get so consumed with this night and day that's one path. The alternative path that opened up was this easier path, and actually it was easier to. Well, it was. At first we thought, well, everything within us makes us go, hey, we ought to take that heavier path. We got to do all-nighters all the time, and so on. But it was because we took this other path that we were able to take a more sustainable path through what turned out to be a 2-year, it's been 2 years of this now. There's been regression. After some successful treatment, all the symptoms started returning. It's been a long journey. And this easier path, this lighter path, that might be the better word for it even, a lighter way of dealing with this crucible experience is what has allowed us to come through as a family healthier, psychologically healthier, whole culture. And at the time of our conversation, she is the best that she's been. And I would now describe her for the first time really as being back, fully mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, everything. Like she's just a whole person again. But it really grew out of that experience. How do we ease this burden? And then on from there, okay, what are the practices and the principles across all different disciplines to help people when life is hard to find an easier, more effortless, lighter way of dealing with life?
Well, I'm so happy to hear she's doing as well as she is. Did you
Thanks.
ever end up getting a diagnosis for what was going on?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. So the diagnosis was encephalitis, which is brain inflammation, but she never was positive. She never showed positive for the existing tests for that. So it was only really 2 neurologists of all that we spoke to that treated her for that. And it was basically like, you can diagnose through treatment. You can say, okay, well, we don't really, we only have so many tests, we only have so much knowledge, so what we'll do is we think that's what it is, and you just treat them and see if they respond. And she has responded, really well to those treatments.
And you talked about taking this more effortless path, this more simple path when it came to, you know, going through that, very challenging time for you and your family. How at that time, it's easy enough for us now, you're somewhat on the other side of that. And for me,
Hmm.
things are going well over here. It's easy enough for us to, think clearly and approach it in that way. But when you're going through something so traumatic like that and it's your family and this is totally new, how did you go about, slowing down and thinking clearly to be able to navigate it in this more productive way?
Well, the things that we did included. That was sort of the idea, is that you've got to maintain this state. I think that the state you're in is the most important thing. The book structure follows this, that there's effortless, and I'm sure you're going to get there, but there's effortless state, effortless action, and effortless results. But the most important is effortless state, because if you get in the wrong state, then everything will be harder. Regardless of what action you're taking, everything becomes harder. And so there was something either intuitive or something that just came to us or it felt inspired, that we've got to maintain a culture, a state of thankfulness, of optimism. And I felt really inspired to read a very particular article. It's from a church leader, Gordon B. Hinckley, and the article is called something like "Cultivating an Attitude of Thankfulness and Optimism," or "Happiness and Optimism," something like that. And I felt like I needed to read that every day, and I listened to it, is what I did. But almost every day for the first 4 months that we were going through this. And what happened for me was that it was like I was having my mind rewired. So everything that was all the external facts would lead you, I think, to feeling depressed, frustrated, angry, weaker. But everything I'm listening to in this article, it's like this sort of war between these two ways of thinking, is saying, look, be grateful. Um, good lies ahead. Everything's going to be all right. And of course, I'm not advocating, I'm not trying to pressure anyone else to believe what I believe or anything, but in it, it's saying, look, trust in God, because He's not going to let you down. He won't leave you comfortless. And what that did, that opened up enough space to, I think, receive other insights and little messages, little items of revelation. In the very worst day, I would say, of the entire experience, this is like, there is no diagnosis, there's no encephalitis being discussed, there's none of this. And she's lost to us. Her personality is gone, and there's nothing. There's nothing to do. And I remember just weeping and just saying, like, basically praying, like, I just want her back. Like, I want her back so badly. And the phrase that came into my mind was, "She will find what is lost." And that's the name of a painting, actually, the same name, that "She will find what's lost." And we have that painting. It's a beautiful piece of a woman and all of these kind of sort of angels above her, trying to reach her and bless her. And it's a very, very touching painting anyway. But what I mean to say by all of this is, if you're in the wrong state, you're not going to hear anything like that. You're not going to feel anything like that. You'll be too consumed with the jalapeno peppers of anger and frustration to be able to hear a quieter, that sort of quieter voice that's more like eating a grape or something. It's like you've got to be able to put yourself in enough of a state to be able to even hear other direction and be able to discern clearly. And so that is the honest answer to that question. Like, reading that every day, shaped and reshaped my own thinking, my own mind. And I thought of myself as being positive and so on before this, but this was like another level. And it changed us all. I mean, it led us, I mean, that led us to other behaviors that grew out of it. We would find something to be thankful for in each other. We started a little practice where if we complained about something, like after you complain, you have to say something you're thankful for. The BJ Fogg, habit recipe. And what I noticed as soon as I started doing that is that I complain a lot more than I realized. But in doing this, it just sparked a certain positivity that then leads to new opportunity. And so out of the state grows, better relationships, more creative solutions, a clearer sense of good things that will come to your mind. And then if the relationships are doing better, then, I mean, it's just this whole upward cycle that follows getting in the right state. And so, I mean, those were some of the things that, and then we're like what that looked like for us is like, then we're getting around the piano and we're singing, we're laughing together, we're playing together, Anna would have these feelings like, no, we shouldn't even work with these neurologists. It's not the right one, but this one I have a good feeling about. And we just felt like the whole thing was a little more led and open and clear. And without that, I just literally do believe she would not have been healed. Like I literally believe that we would have just got buried by the wrong paths and the wrong things and exhausted ourselves even before all the symptoms return the second time. So when you have something that matters this much, when your responsibility is to keep the fires burning, you can't just pour all the fuel on it the first moment. You've got to go at it in a certain way so that you can be there for the long run and so that good things can come even though you're dealing with something that's so challenging.
I hear you. And what I'm hearing you saying in a really general sense is part of being in this effortless state, for you at least at that time, was being optimistic, having gratitude, being thankful. But let's get really granular. Let's stick here for a bit and talk about what people can do if they're feeling like, things are just really hard right now and I'm just pushing and I'm feeling burnt out. How do we, because you said that getting to that state is the most important part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the specifics of getting to that state if somebody's not there yet.
Yeah, first, let me just have sympathy for this. I think there's just like two kinds of people in the world right now, amidst the pandemic, on the edge of this transition itself, quite stressful, burdensome for a lot of people, uncertain. In this world, there's two kinds of people. There are people who are burned out, and then there's the type of person who knows they are burned out. And that's it, right? Like, it's better to be in the second category than the first, to just admit it. So then we start to go, well, what would we do about that? If we're in a kind of exhausted state, the biggest problem with being in an exhausted state, being in a state of burnout, is that you don't know you are. That's what the research shows, is that in the same way that burnout clouds your judgment in relationships, in other decisions you make out there, it also clouds your judgment in being able to sense your own burnout. And so like this is the first, like you can't be in denial and make change at the same time. So you have to just wake up to this, like, yeah, I'm probably burned out right now. That's probably what's going on. And you've got to have a pretty good reason for that not to be the case after the last year that we've had. So once you sort of have that little awakening, what can you do about it? And I don't want anyone to get burdened with, I got to do all these things to get out of being burned out. But I think that there are things that you can do. I mean, obviously, the thankfulness I've already shared. You complain about anything, say something you're thankful for. It has a psychological, physiological, immediate impact. And so that is something. The other day I was exhausted coming home from an appointment. I'm like, well, I'm not in the effortless state right now, so what do you do about it? And the question I asked was, well, what's an effortless way to get into the effortless state? And the answer was like, go home and take a nap. And that might not be possible for everyone based on their family situation. If you've got very young children, or you're the only the only caretaker, it can be very hard to even do that. But if you can, sometimes people think, oh, I'll push through, I'll power through, and they can power through, but it comes at a cost. So just like even an effortless nap is something I think that's important. I think that another thing that I would recommend to people is to flip the question, like to invert the question. Whatever you're dealing with in life, like the next thing that you're responsible for, ask yourself, how can this be effortless? So a lot of the questions we ask in our lives that make burden us are in the back of our heads, so to speak. We're not aware of the questions. We're just aware that we're living them out in the world. And they might be questions like, well, how can I do this perfectly? Or how can I do this without making a mistake? Or what are all the right ways to do this? I don't know. Like, there's all sorts of questions back there that aren't very helpful. But I'm telling you, one of the questions that is almost never lurking in the back of our minds, that we almost never ask, is how can this be easier? How can I do? What's the effortless way to do this? And as a result, because we don't ask the question, we don't get the answer to that. And I have been on this now like multi-year journey of asking that question, and it never ceases to amaze me. It is an ultra powerful question. From the tiny, I have this. I was looking around my office the other day. Oh, I got to tidy this. I've got this printer on the floor here. It's been here 2 weeks. Every time I look at it, I think, do I sell it? Do I give it away? Do I throw it away? If I throw it away, I have to find a recycling center. And it's just enough complexity in my head that I just keep procrastinating it. And then I'm like, okay, ask the question. Ask the questions or answers. Ask a different question. How can this be effortless? And instantly, I look up. There's some workers working over here, and I'm like, well, maybe they want it. So I go outside. Do you want it? Yes. Get the printer. Bring it to them. Within 2 minutes of asking the question, I don't just have the answer. It's actually executed. It's done. And I'm like, that is good, man. That question is good. Let's ask it again on the next thing. I was coaching someone. I said, okay. This is the type of person I'm writing the book to. She feels guilty if she's eating lunch. She's up till 4 a.m. in the morning, photoshopping for a youth activity the next morning, church activity. No one's asking her to do this. It's unpaid. It's not this is just because she thinks, she has to do it this way. It's to do these questions in the back of her mind. How can I overachieve? How can I go the second mile with this, the third mile, the fourth mile, way beyond what anyone's asking me to do? I've got to show that I'm worthy. I mean, all this stuff's in the back of her mind. It's cluttering up the way she's approaching things, making it constantly exhausted state. In fact, one of the things in the back of her mind is, if I'm not exhausted, I'm not doing enough. So you can imagine how that behavior follows through. So I said, look, just don't get overwhelmed with 100 things to make your life more effortless. Just ask this question the next time someone asks you to do something. She's a manager at a university, and a professor calls her and says, well, I've got this course. I'd like you to get your videography team to record it for the semester. And she instantly goes into gear, just like she always does. She goes, okay, I'm going to overachieve. I'm going to do absolutely superb job on this. So that looks like multiple cameras. Whole team, she'll get a whole team involved. It's a 4-month commitment. We'll edit it. We'll do intros and outros and music. We'll add graphics. I'm going to wow this professor. He's going to love us. Then she remembers the question, how can it be effortless? So she spends a couple of minutes talking to him and discovers that it's just for one student who's got an athletic commitment on a few of these sessions. And so the solution they come up with together is, let's have one of the student record it on a phone whenever he's going to miss and just send it to him. The professor is delighted. He hasn't thought about it either, because he's not asking that question. How could it be effortless? And so she gets off the phone. She's like, I just saved 4 months for me and this whole team for a 10-minute conversation because I asked a new question. That is the power of asking this question. So that is that is like a really solid way to begin this journey of rewiring our old way of thinking and doing to move into a more effortless state, and then all the benefits that follow.
As you're sharing that story about the video and recording for the other student, it reminded me of a story that you shared in the intro of your book that had to do with you and pushing too hard, and it ended up, backfiring on you, where you had this presentation to do, and I think it was
Right?
all done. You felt good about it, and then you started picking it apart the night before the presentation. Ended up staying up all night and trying too hard, and it ended up backfiring. You bombed the presentation the next day. So talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just that the presentation was done. I had done this presentation many times, and it was smooth. It was resolved. I'd done it for other clients, and everyone was happy. In fact, that's why this new company had asked for it. Someone had moved from another company. They said, "Oh, listen, you did this work there all over the world. You worked with that company. Come and do it for us too. In fact, just come and do 3 sessions, and hopefully we can then use that to have you come in for a couple of years to help us with this transition period." It's a great company. It's a branded company, and they're on a high growth rate. It's like a game changer opportunity. All I had to do was nothing. Just show up and do what I already knew how to do. The handouts were printed. The slides were ready. I just had to not mess it up. And instead, the night before, I'm like, well, there is this new idea that I have that I think could be really special for them. And I think I'm going to just do this. And so I start, well, let's redo some slides here. And then as I redo a few, I'm like, well, let's just redo them all. That's great. Oh, yes, I'm going to really push this. And let's just do we can do the new printouts. And so I design new printouts and I send them to them so that they are literally having to rush the next morning to print up these new handouts. And I get to the presentation and I'm now foggy brained, because it wasn't a full all-nighter, but it was like I did not get enough sleep. And I'm going into this presentation just like blurry, unclear, not centered. I'm doing the presentation. I keep on having to look behind me to even see what the slides are. And one of the slides triggered somebody, and they're like, "Well, hold on, I don't know about that." And I wasn't prepared for any really heavy pushback because it's brand new content, and you don't want to be doing brand new content at a high stakes event. And so the whole thing was stressful for me. It was not a home run. And they canceled the next 2 presentations, and that was the end of it. And so I had just stolen failure from victory's jaws because I was trying too hard, because I was trying to go the extra mile. Not everything needs the extra mile. That's one way that we make things harder than they need to be, is we can just do the first mile. Just because I'm asked to do this presentation is not a good enough reason for me to come up with a new presentation, with new slides, with new handouts that didn't ask for any of that. Like sometimes a simpler path is just to do what has been asked for. That's it. Imagine that.
Well, the question that pops into my head as you explain that is, how do we know when it might be worth our while to push that extra mile? And how do we know when enough is enough?
Well, I think that whenever you reach the point of diminishing returns, that's one good test. So, an example with writing the book is if I wrote the book for 2 hours on a day, then that was optimal. I would get a lot of return for those 2 hours. It needed to be early in the morning when I was clearest and in the best state. But 2 hours, you get a lot of return. If I did 3 hours of work, the third hour would still give me a return on investment, but less than each of the first 2 hours. That's like diminishing returns, right? For every extra hour of effort, I'm getting less back. That's a pretty good place to stop. But if you move further, if I did 4 or 5 hours or more, I would move into negative returns, meaning that for every extra minute of work I'm doing, I am making the manuscript overall worse than if I hadn't even worked on it that day. You're getting negative returns. It's making the whole thing worse. So you for sure should stop if you're at negative returns. You just literally stop, close the computer, walk away, go on a walk, do anything else because you're making it worse. So I think that's one important test that you say, and it takes some self-awareness, but to have a sense of like, am I getting as much return for each ounce of effort? And certainly, am I making it worse now because I'm pushing harder? That can be true in a book. It can be true in an entrepreneurial venture. It can be true in a relationship, a conversation that you're in. It's going worse and worse. Just hey, let's just take a time out. We'll come back to it. Let's come back to it when we're a little calmer, when we're a little more rested. Let's not try and power through here, because we're all going to get hurt more if we stay at this for longer.
And when you talk about that example of pacing yourself, writing a couple hours in the morning when you're writing the book, that makes sense to me. But I guess somebody listening right now might be part of a bigger organization where that mentality of go, 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 and we work harder than everybody else. What if you're somebody who wants to break free of that, but you're part of a bigger team, a bigger company?
Well, there's some funny research that I came across that it didn't make it into the book, but it's fascinating research that shows that where they took this organization that was in this type of mentality 24/7, they expected employees 80 hours a week, and they ran a test where they said this group is actually working 8 hours a week, and this group is going to act like they're working 80 hours a week, but they're not going to do it. And they found that they could not tell, that people could not discern which group was actually doing it and which group was just saying they were doing it. So, to me, there's something there about running a reverse pilot in your culture. So I'm not advocating lying, but I'm just advocating that you could just test, like, well, I'm just going to do a few hours less and see what the impact is. I'm going to, one of the practical ideas for the book is to create a done for the day list. And you say, okay, when you're making your plan in the morning, which I don't always do. And so I feel like I'm pretty confident that not everybody is doing that not everyone is making a list, even planning their day each day, or the research supports that. But it's a particular way of planning your day to say, okay, what things would I need to get done today where I personally would feel satisfied to be done? Now, I get it. You could have a manager that just never satisfied. They could say that no matter what you do, they want more. So that I understand there are exceptions to this. But to at least begin by getting clear yourself and to make that list and to work to get those things done. And you're going to make more value when you do it that way than if you just have an endless to-do list, hit the day as if everything is of equal value, and never stop. In the times of the pandemic, you have, this relentless, Zoom, eat, sleep, repeat world, that you look at your Fitbit at the end of the day, and there's 300 steps on it, and we've given up any sense of boundary. So we have to construct that for ourselves if we want to have a sustainable pace. But done for the day list is one of those things. And then we can talk more about how to have a conversation with your manager to be able to, better produce boundaries that are a win-win, if that's of interest.
I think that's important. Let's move into that.
Well, I mean, I think that what you don't want to do and what you do want to do. You don't want to be the person who is either capitulating all the time. Well, it's just me. I'm just going to get destroyed by this culture. Say yes to everyone and everything. You don't want to be that. But nor do you want to be at the other end of the extreme, the complainer, the whiner, right? You don't want to be perceived that way. Well, listen, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so burned out. There's so many things. It's too much. Because then you put yourself into a category, unfortunately, in a culture that you're describing, where you're not going to be heard and you're just going to be seen. It's going to like potentially career limiting type of conversation to be having. So the key is to be, if you're in that kind of culture, to be seen as proactive, as thoughtful, as, that you're coming because you want to be productive and more productive. And so if you can set up in the book, one of the constructs or the tools is to create a high trust agreement. And you can do that whether you're the manager or you're working for someone. Either side could initiate this. And the idea is this, that in every relationship, there's person A, there's like three people involved. There's person A, person B, and then there's a third person, which is the agreement that governs the relationship. And often when we're trying to look for why something isn't working optimally, we think, well, maybe it's them. It must be them. And then we think, well, maybe it's us. And we get caught in that, well, is it them or is it us cycle? But I find more often than not, it's actually the agreement. The agreement that is governing the relationship is so unclear. It's so messy. It's just been built from all sorts of piecemeal conversations here or there. The manager has said something once and you go, okay, note to self, that's what they like. They don't even remember they said that. Now you're holding it. And so it becomes all burdensome and unclear. A high trust agreement is where you answer 5 questions. And you can do this ahead of time, write the answers down, and bring it to a manager to have a conversation. The 5 areas are results. What are the most important results that I need to achieve? That's the question you're answering. Number 2 is roles. Who is doing what? What part is the manager's role? What part's mine? What part's other members of the team? Let's just get clear about who is doing what in this. So basically, you want to know what you're on the hook for. Number 3 is rules. Are there any rules that you have or they have that ought to just get articulated? If one of the rules for you is that you have a certain boundary. So one of the rules for me is that I want to be able to be with my family between this time and this time to eat dinner together, right? This could be listed there. If your manager has rules about the work needs to be completed by this time or in this way, what's minimum viable standards? So rules. The 4th thing is resources. What resources do you have access to and you would need to have access to achieve these results? And the 5th and final one is the results. No, not results, it's rewards. And that is, when will we get together to review progress and what are the rewards or consequences for completion or non-completion? So that's what you're trying to do. It takes a little more effort up front to set that up than just to go with the flow and just deal with whatever your current agreement is. But it's such a bargain because once you set it up once, it works for you in making execution more effortless 10 times, 100 times, with that same manager on that same team. When you have high clarity on those 5 questions, it helps everyone to have good boundaries to be able to produce really great results in a way that can happen again and again.
You touched on something there I want to get a bit deeper into. It reminded me of an example in your book. You talked about setting things up, maybe taking a little bit more time up front for, a better result long term. And you
Right.
share a story in the book about, I don't know if this is somebody that you worked with or just somebody I don't know how you were connected with them, but they had a problem opening their drawer and things would get jammed up every time they opened it.
Yes.
And they would just keep spending 30 seconds every time they had to open that drawer, jiggling it around to get it to open. Eventually, somebody stepped in, spent 2 minutes and fixed the problem. And then you can only imagine over the course of a year how much time that saved. So even if something is taking longer to set up in the present, you have to look at it more holistically.
Yeah, this is exactly right. This is the practice we're talking about here is just to invest in the long tail. That is to notice something that is irritating you repeatedly. It's a problem repeatedly, and these don't have to be massive things. They could be small things, like with him, he's jiggling his drawer every time he does it. The pencil, the pencil box gets in the wrong place, so he has to jiggle it again and it's this hassle every single day. And it was Dean Acheson that told me this story. He was the mentor for David Allen, who wrote Getting Things Done. Really, the Getting Things Done stuff originally came from Dean Acheson. And Dean was working with this client. You've given the details of it, but he just paused and he did ask him, well, how long have you dealt with it? Well, 2 years. He said, okay, well, let's just take a couple of minutes to just fix this. And he did. And it was completely fixed. Like 2 minutes, literally 2-minute prevention. And Dean says, how long have you dealt with that? Yeah, 2 years. Okay. How long did it take to solve it? 2 minutes. Right? That's the idea. 2 minutes to save 2 years. And so you're looking for irritating things that you could do something about within 2 minutes that would then solve the problem before it happens in the future. And there's loads of them. Once you start this little exercise, like looking for 2-minute preventions, 2-minute things that have a long tail to them. And you don't have to be super clever about this, because it's just the things that irritate you regularly, that just make your life a little more difficult than they need to be. I had an example of this just yesterday, where I was signing into Zoom, and I have the passwords in a password protected app that already is meant to make it easier, and does make my life easier. I don't have to remember the passwords. But I had 2 different sign-ins. So every single time I sign into Zoom, every time when I'm the one that's organizing the meeting, I have to choose between the 2 that are there. And just yesterday, after I'd been reflecting on this principle, this practice, I'm like, why are you still dealing with that? Why do you every single time just allow that? And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back up to my password protector, and I'm going to delete the other sign-in information, which I did. And it was so satisfying to then sign back in and to just have one option that autofills, and I've removed that one step. And so now, going forward, that's always easier. And that's the thing I hope it, maybe it doesn't sound profound, but I hope it sounds like I can do that. I could do that in my life. Taking tiny things within 2 minutes that will make every other interaction a little easier today and tomorrow. That's what we're looking for when it comes to the practice of investing in the long tail.
Which we could use the example you shared earlier with the printer, where it took you 2 minutes instead of, tripping over that every day for a year, and even wasting mental bandwidth thinking
That's
about
right.
it, and
That's right.
you just took care of it. And I can imagine in the beginning, when this is new to somebody, it'd probably be helpful to make a list, because, you could probably spend a couple days going through and knocking these off and not get to what you're actually trying to do that day. But then it must be so much easier over time when you've gotten to that point and you're just doing maintenance as these things come up, and you're not, going back and taking care of all the old business.
Yes, and I think, I mean, I don't want to make it so esoteric that people think this is just a conceptual book. It is actionable. It's full of actionable advice, and it's also a mindset. Just to take on the mindset. How can I make it? How can I make it a bit more effortless to do what's essential? You make the list, the done for the day list. Identify the few things that you think, okay, these are the things that matter. When I'm done with these, I'll feel good about today. And ask about every item on your list. How can I make it effortless? At least ask. I mean, maybe there isn't an answer, or maybe there's not an answer that comes to you. Fine, you're not worse off than before you asked. But it is such a fun game because you start to open up this avenue that you just didn't have before. If you can't find an effortless way to do it, at least you could ask, well, how might it be a little more enjoyable? If these are the things that really need to get done, I'm committed to doing them today. Do they all have to be drudgery? Does it all have to be suffering? Or could it be enjoyable and joyful? That to me is another question that's going to produce a better answer. We have good ritual around eating together at night as a family. But when it comes to tidying up afterwards, it's just drudgery. Or it was for a long time, because my children would just disappear. It would be like ninjas. They're just suddenly gone. And my job would be cat and mouse, how to, go get them, bring them back. They're not enjoying that. I'm not enjoying that. And I said, okay, how can we make it effortless? And I thought, as soon as I thought that, I thought, okay, actually, you could create pretty much a high trust agreement. What's the result? What are the resources? Who's doing what? We wrote it all out. There's nothing complicated, just on a piece of paper, Sharpie, divided it up, trained each person. What's minimum standard? What's the rules? The minimum standard of care. If you're taking out the rubbish, you need to put the bag in afterwards. There's some training involved. We do all of this. Day begins. We're going to start. Let's go. What happens? Nothing. It's exactly the same as before. They all just disappear off. It's just ninja world again. And it wasn't until we added this one more feature that it was a tipping point. And it was my eldest daughter who just put on basically karaoke music. It was the first, for a while, it was like Disney classics. And so as soon as you do this, what I noticed happening is that like someone would start singing. Someone would, the music is loud, someone just starts singing, and it just changes the whole feeling. And so it takes it from drudgery into kind of this quite enjoyable ritual, actually. Everyone gets into it, they're singing, they're dancing, and you can't sort of help but get drawn into it. And so it's not that I think the question, how can we make it effortless, is a complete cure-all. It'll get you a lot of the way there. But if you add on this extra question, how can I make it enjoyable? That is also a way that you can start finding some really good answers to be able to, like, life just doesn't have to be, what benefit is suffering all the time? Why is that a good plan?
So earlier we went deep into effortless state. Would putting the music on and changing the state and changing how you're feeling be an example of that?
Yes, exactly. That's one of that's just one of the chapters within Effortless State, and it is, if you can make it. My wife and I have made lists of like what joy, like we think of it like Lego blocks of joy. Like, what do you enjoy doing? It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't. Just enjoyable things that you like to do, and spark some joy for you. And now that we have those lists for each other, we can use them as building blocks to construct not just habits, but rituals. There's a difference. Um, Habits are things that you do routinely. We know what habits are. Rituals are like they're habits with a soul, meaning that the way you do them brings you some satisfaction. And so, yes, now the tidying up has gone from being a chore. It's not just a habit. It's not just something we do every day. It's also now a ritual, that the experience itself is quite an enjoyable thing. And we like how we do it, not just that we get it done. And so that's kind of, a distinction. And you can use those building blocks of joy I mentioned to construct rituals. My wife and I have not been especially great at doing our financial meeting each week. In fact, we just wouldn't do it every week. And the thought of doing it, the longer it goes between meetings, the more stressful it is, because there's all these things you haven't got to, and you need to get to them, and our orientation towards money is different too. So that brings all of that difference up, and we just said, okay, well, this hasn't been much fun. This is chore territory. How can we make it more enjoyable? How can we turn it into a ritual? And so we did a few things. First of all, we routinized it. We had a set time that we would do it every day. The second thing that we would do is that we would have we bring like certain food that we enjoyed to eat. I like listening to music on repeat, certain songs, and so and I accommodated that. We'd have some music going in, and really all of that was to get us into the habit of actually being able to to do this and to enjoy doing it every week. And now we do it every week. We're consistent. It's a lot less stressful because you're taking care of business along the way. So you can apply it in a lot of different ways.
Okay, that makes sense. And continuing on your example there of working with your wife on this, earlier we talked about if you're part of a bigger corporation and people might not be on board. Let's talk about the people closest to us in our life. What if, this is something you want to partake in and simplify things in life, and maybe your partner isn't on board. Maybe it's because they don't understand, or for whatever reason they're just not interested. How do you begin to work with them on this kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, I would caution anyone against trying a really effortful, exhausting way of applying effortless. Like, don't fight this. Find an find a small way in. For example, I mean, it's hard to answer your question without a more precise thing, but you could simply, you could ask somebody. You could just ask them this: what's one thing that's essential to them that they wish was more effortless? And then, as you're reading the book and you're looking for ideas, or you're brainstorming together, it's important. They wish that they were getting to it. and you can then support them in helping them with that to make it a bit easier. Exercise was like that for us. We'd done pretty well with exercise for a few months through COVID, and then certainly for a couple of months this year, I mean, Anna and I would go for walks together, sometimes not every day, but we sort of got a little loose on that too, sometimes as much as an hour. But really, that was it. We knew that was like necessary but insufficient. And so when I was talking to Anna, one of the things that she really wanted to make more effortless was exercise. One of the ways we came up with that was we'd just do it together. So everyone needed to exercise. We did sort of mandate it. Like from 8 till 9, we're exercising. Now you can go swimming with dad, or you can exercise here with mom. It's up to you. Or you could come up with your own thing, but you've got to be exercising through that hour. And so it's actually been has become a fun ritual. I swim. That's my thing. We've only been doing it I'm talking like we're in sort of our second week of this. But every day, just about, we're off swimming, and I'll play tennis with my son. And I mean, these are fun things. These are enjoyable. We're not forcing it. We're not saying, okay, what's the maximum that we can do in swimming? We're just trying to make it sustainable. But I think, I'm giving you an illustration of it, but the question we can ask anybody, I think, is just, hey, what's something essential to you that you wish was a little more effortless? And now you've got something to begin with. And I wouldn't try and take on the world. I'd just try and help them a little bit with that and see how you can support and serve them in it.
That makes sense. And Greg, you've talked about a couple things that you've done to manage your self care: the walking, now the swimming, the napping you mentioned before. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, what are some of the things that you have in place other than the things we've talked about that help you slow down and maintain balance?
Yeah, I mean, I was inspired by Ben Bergeron. He read Essentialism and applied it in a way that I had not been as deliberate about. And he basically said, okay, I'm going to have a time I'm done with work for the day. Did we already talk about this? I can't remember. But he said, okay, it's 5:25 is his cutoff time, and this was before COVID, and so he would literally have a reputation in his office of at 5:25 he would like be closing his laptop and he'd be walking to the door so he could get in his car for 5:30, get home by 6. Now, not everyone can do that. I do understand. I mean, he's an entrepreneur, so yes, he has an option to do that. Many entrepreneurs have the same option, but still don't do it. So it's still different. He's still choosing a boundary, and 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 so I was inspired by that, and I said, okay, in the pandemic, I just noticed in our family dynamic, if I'm done at 5, it means I can get out, help set up dinner, help with getting everyone going, help just while I'm still have some energy in the tank, while things are still feeling good, you can help then. And if I didn't do that, it would 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, it never stops. And then, of course, by the time you then do go back out and join everybody, everyone's more burned out, everyone's hungrier, it doesn't work as well. So I started a practice of like a town crier. I would walk out of the door, I would call it loud. That's what helped keep me accountable to it. It's like, it is 4:59, and because I wanted the credit when I'd done it, and then you feel also a little like a little chagrined when it's 5:23 when you're calling that number out because you've said it's 5 o'clock that is your cutoff. And so that's one of the practices that I've done that I think it's been important for me. So I just didn't burn out, but it's also been important for our family culture to be able to make it sustainable and positive instead of it just getting more and more strained, which I think could easily have happened if we'd approached this last year differently.
So, Greg, we've went deep into the effortless state. There's also the effortless action, the effortless results, and I'd love to differentiate between the three of them. So, can you kind of just take a few minutes
Yes.
and break that apart?
Effortless state, as you say, we've covered. Effortless action is, we've also mentioned in various ways, but it's really about simplifying this task at hand, this essential task or project. If you've got a one-time project you want to make easier, the chapters in that section are all about how to make that easier to do, to get the right things done one time. And what's some of the questions and parts in that are, well, what does done look like? If you haven't defined what done looks like, you can't get it done. And very frequently our tasks become more complicated because we keep adding stuff and we never get there. We're just not, and you could do it. Of course, we mentioned the book already, but you could do it with a book forever. 10 years from now, you're still playing with the same book. You're never going to get it done. So knowing what done looks like on any essential project is important. Another question you can ask is, well, what's the first obvious action? Not worrying about the 100th step. What's the first step that you can do? And that is, by definition, it's like a doable thing. It's like you need to pull up that document on my browser where I'm writing the book. Okay, now you know what the next step is to do it. Another question you can ask there, we've talked about it a little already, but how can we find an effortless pace? So particularly what you want with a project is, even if it's a one-time project, is like, what is my minimum and maximum, my lower bound, so that you work on it every day, but also my upper bound. So for me with the book, let's say it might be saying, okay, no fewer than 500 words a day, but no more than 1,000 words a day. So that on the days that you feel like you could just, I'm ready, I'm just going to go at this, I could write pages and pages. Yes, but you don't want to do that because you'll burn yourself out and it's false economy. What you want is something that you say, I could do more today than I'm doing, but I'll keep it at that. With the exercise that we just talked about a moment ago, the first day we went back, I could have done, I'm sure, 60, 80, maybe even 100 lengths. I haven't done it for a while. I would have felt sick if I'd done that. If I do 100 lengths without having done it in practice, I'm not going to feel good. And then I'm only going to do it once. And that's the end of that. You've sort of ended before you've begun. So it was 40 lengths is the target. And that's helped because some days you're crunched on time, but you say, well, we can still do 40 lengths. Some days you've got loads more time, but you think, yeah, but we're going to stick to it so that I'll be here tomorrow morning. So those are some of the things that you can do to get the task itself, done, make it easier. And I mean, I'll give you an example. Personal example with this is that my son had said to me, he's 12 years old. He said, I'd really love to get my Eagle Scout by the time I turn 14, which is a bit of a stretch goal by any estimation, actually. But I said, okay, well, I can, I'll sign up for this with him. And so we went on a journey to be able to achieve that goal. And we did achieve, well, I say we achieved it. What happened is that we'd done everything, including the final Eagle project, which was building this 180-foot fence. We had loads of people helping us. It was actually one of the more magical, effortless experiences of my life that actual day. It was like this group of 30, 40 people come and everyone helping and they know what they're doing. And it was just really remarkable. Built it, painted it, finished it. Okay. The one remaining thing to get an Eagle Scout is that he needs to finish a written report about that project. That's it. That's the last thing. It's not an exciting piece of the process. And also, we had seen other examples that people had done that had taken, I suspect, hundreds of hours to do. I mean, certainly very fancy, wooden boxes, glorious things, just perfect, incredible. And so every time he or I thought about this, we just procrastinated it. And the thing is, I know personally someone who never got their Eagle Scout, even though all they had to remain was this project. And they procrastinated it till the day it was due. And they got it in the day after it was due. If you get an Eagle project in the report one day after your 18th birthday, they will not accept it. They have 100% zero mercy on that. And I suppose they have it because of exactly this phenomenon that people leave it to the last moment. And then if you have no deadline, well, then they're 19, they're 25, they still haven't done it. And it just goes on for their whole life. So we just started realizing, like, well, we're going to get into this pattern. Everything's done, and we got years. You could wait to 80. And so we said, okay, how can we get effortless action? How can we make it easier to get this project done? And we just used exactly the questions I've just asked there. What does done look like? We've actually physically driven to the office at the Scouse office, and they have written on a piece of paper, they have accepted it, it is done. That's what done looks like. Next action, we need to buy a three ring binder. That's the next action. So we just started getting on the next action. What's the minimum number of steps to completion? We just identified it. We don't need to do these glorious things. We don't have all the bells and whistles. We need a 3-page essay at the beginning. We need some photographs and 1 sentence on each one, just saying what it is. Done. Nobody gets hurt. And this is how we got the job done. We used these very simple questions to keep us focused. Not everything has to have a second mile to it. Everything has to be perfect, complicated. We got it done. It was done within a 2-week period after we started asking these questions. And he was an Eagle Scout 1 week before his 14th birthday. So it helped us to get the thing done. That's what is meant by effortless action.
Let's move into effortless results.
Effortless results is distinctive to effortless action because effortless results are about how can you exercise effort once and get a result many, many times. So it's the difference between linear effort, like this project with Jack. We're only going to do that once. Well, thank goodness in a way, but that's a one-time project. It's a one-time thing. But many results in life you want to happen in a way that you get the results again and again. And so in these cases, you can either keep putting in the same amount of effort. Every day you can decide to exercise every day, right? That's a linear decision. Am I going to exercise? Okay, fine, I'll exercise. Am I going to exercise? Well, no, I'm not today. Every day you go through it. When am I going to exercise? And what kind of exercise? These are linear decisions. You exhaust yourself making the same decisions again and again. A residual decision, you make the decision once, you know where you're going, you know when you're going. And so that's all removed from the equation. Might take a little more effort to organize up front, but the result comes to you again and again. But there's just the whole of life can be divided this way. And it's my personally most important learning from researching and writing Effortless is that I want everything in my life, as much as possible, everything I'm sure is impossible, but a far greater ratio of my effort I want to go on getting residual results now. I want to be able to put effort in once and see rewards again and again. But one reason for launching the What's Essential podcast, I'm already having the conversations with people, but normally they're happening just in private and only they and I can gain anything from it. But if you have the podcast set up, it takes a little more work to set it up. But then you're reaching an enormous number of people from the same conversation. And it lives on forever too. So people are discovering every day they can go and just subscribe and suddenly they've got all these conversations. There's this whole asset and tool. You can automate. For the first time, I've built an online academy. And literally the reason I built this is because of this discovery. I spent too much of my entrepreneurial work on linear results over these residual, more effortless results. And they're effortless because once you set them up, like this is literally true. The effortless.com, people can go there right now. If they order Effortless, the book, they get access to this 21-day challenge where they're going to learn small ways to make what's essential easier. I set this whole academy up. We've got whole phases that are coming with it that have been built. We just haven't rolled them out yet. And I did it because I thought, look, I spend too much of my life training and speaking. You do it. Hopefully it's been a great experience. But then you just have to do it again for the next audience and again and again. There's no residual element to it. And if you build the academy, you build it once, build it right. You can keep editing it, of course, and making it better over time. But it's like done. As with people from I don't know how many countries all over the world, every single day when I wake up, there are people that have signed up for this 21-day challenge. They're signing up for the academy. And it's literally while I'm sleeping. That's residual results. If I die tomorrow, that impact will continue. Books are residual. residual results, right? You write Essentialism once, people can read it all over the world, and they do, and it's an amazing thing. And with Effortless too, you write it. It's an amazing, beautiful thing to me. The idea not just of residual results from a financial benefit, but I mean from just an impact benefit, that you do it once, but it keeps flowing to you again and again. So there's a whole variety of examples, but that's really the principle of effortless results.
And in the book, I think you use the analogy like compound interest, where investing money and having that interest compound over time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to use a concrete illustration of compound interest or compounding impact, my friend Jessica Jackley was in Africa, and she comes across this entrepreneur who's selling produce on the side of the road, and she just gets talking to her. You know, how does your business work? Well, I buy it from a middleman. You know, it's subsistence basically, right? She just has to go and buy every day the produce she thinks she can sell, and she's doing that every day to survive. So it's a perfect metaphor for like linear results. You're putting in the effort once every day. If she doesn't put the effort in today, she doesn't have enough money to herself to eat or to feed her family. So she is in a perennial scenario. Jessica says, well, why don't you go to the miss the middleman, go to the actual producer? You could get it for cheaper, and then you would make some profit and start being able to get ahead. I can't afford literally to leave and go make that negotiation. So that's I can't. There's no buffer. So Jessica said, well, how much would it take to be able to organize all of that? The amount is $500. It totally change your life if she has that $500. And Jessica thinks, well, I or the people I'm with here could probably just give you that money. But they just had this session with Mohammed Yunus from the Crimean Bank, which does all the microloan, was sort of one of the innovators around microloans. And so they just said, well, maybe we do it a little differently. And so what they did is they crowdsourced the $500. They set up an organization called Kiva. And the basis of Kiva is that any person, right, like you don't have to be some big investor, anyone can go onto kiva.org and you choose a certain amount that you want to help fund somebody. And when they repay that loan, and I think it's like 97% of people that do, that you get that credit back. Now, you could take your money back out, or you can reinvest it again in another entrepreneur. So you just have the satisfaction of seeing your money actually help a specific individual who relatively small amounts of money can suddenly change their business, their world. And so instead of just helping that one person that one day, $500, instead they invested to building Kiva. And they're like, I don't know, $1.5 billion of loans have been given out so far. $500, $1.5 billion. That is the difference and power between thinking about linear results and thinking about residual results. That is really what we're talking about. It's an exponential difference. And if this is too overwhelming for people, fine, just start with the things we've already been talking about. But this is really the promise of Effortless, because if you can set it up right, it's literally effortless. It keeps coming back to you, whether you're sleeping, whether you're not, whether you're doing, whether you're not, whether you're alive, whether you're not. Impact can continue. And to me, it's a game-changing insight.
Let's talk more about the podcast. This is something you started while you're writing this book. What's been the greatest challenge you found? It seems like it's something you're really enjoying, but I'm curious, what challenges have crept up with creating this new type of media?
Well, I think of every medium is like a new business. I think about it that way because there's a temptation for someone who teaches and writes, wants to impact through ideas, to underestimate the differences between genres and mediums. So someone says, well, if I can write a best-selling book, then I can have a keynote business that just works and flows. And that's not the case at all. You've got to think of them as separate businesses, separate customers, everything. And I like thinking of them as separate businesses because it helps me to stay honest with whether I should even take something on or not. Because it's not just, oh, hey, just little fangling around with this, and suddenly you'll have a whole new thing. No, you have to learn and respect the new genre. Podcasting is a whole new genre. It's a different thing. It's not like keynotes. It's not like writing. It's its own thing, and I really love it. I admire it um, as its own genre, as its own opportunity to make an impact. It has its own rules, spoken and unspoken. What I love about it, what pulls me in and draws me in to do it, is because there's an intimacy to it. That somebody listening to this right now, they're on their run, they're on a walk, maybe they're doing the dishes, maybe they're tidying up. You're in their world, and I just love that. That's a very lovely opportunity to be part of somebody's sort of just kind of in their ear and in their conversation, and so I that's something I respect and love about podcasting. I'm conscious of my own weakness when it comes to this new thing. So all I can say really about that is that I am committed for the long run. That it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I was talking to another podcaster recently, and they said 10% of podcasts will survive beyond 3 podcast episodes, and of those, only 10% of those will last past 20 episodes. And so there is power in just consistency, in just outliving other people who got into it and then got exhausted and fed up with it and moved on. And so for me, it's just, I'm just happy to still be in doing it, still meeting people, still talking to people. Some of them well-known, famous guests. That my favorite episodes have been the ones with my wife, where we just get to talk, and actually those have been the most downloaded episodes, the most listened to and commented on, and so we're going to do more of that. We've also had lots of everyday people who just come on, and we just talk through and coach through how to make what's essential a bit more effortless.
Love it. Well, I wish you all the best with the show. Other than listeners going and checking out the podcast, getting a copy of your new book, how can they connect with you after the show, Greg?
Yeah, I think that if people want to just go to essentialism.com, if this online academy sounds of interest to them, they can get it for free. They can purchase it anytime they want. But right now, if they get a copy of Effortless, they can upload the receipt and get the 21-day challenge for free. And I've really heard great feedback about people that have taken that, and I think it's an easy, good way to get going. So I think that's what I'll say.
All right. It's going to all be linked up in the show notes. And love the new book, Greg. And I wish you all the best.
Jesse, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.